Welcome to Golf Cask Original Series, The Blend. Perfect for golf and whiskey enthusiasts alike.
Welcome, Golf Cask Nation. This is Brian Bailey here, bringing you our new podcast. This would be episode 8. It's a question and answer episode. Episode 9, which will be coming next time, is going to be called Tempo and Timing, Controlling the Putt Distance, and the Burn of the Barrel. So we're going to talk about how to control time and length to work on distance control, as well as what the char in the barrel does to your flavor profile. So that'll be episode 9. Working on that right now. It'll be available next Sunday, but again, this is this Sunday. This is our question and answer segment. And what I went ahead and did is took questions I tried to find from each category inside a Golf Cask. So remember, we have newbies, new to golf, new to whiskey. We have casuals, starting to play golf, starting to enjoy whiskey more. We have dangerous, you're starting to build a repertoire of knowledge and skills inside of golf and whiskey. And then you have the enthusiast that's all in, that loves the game of golf, loves whiskey. So I'm going to try to answer questions from each category. And then I'll hit a kind of a rapid question at the very end. Majority of these questions actually come from the Golf Cask members. I got some from Instagram, but a majority of these are questions that I've gotten from members that are already in the system. And again, if you are membership, which it is free right now, go to golfcask.com, create a free account. You can ask questions in there. But again, if you are a member, of course, you will be moved up in the priority list. So as we do a question and answer, I'm going to do a tasting with you just for fun, because why not? So what I have here is Elijah Craig. Nice. This is actually a toasted barrel. So this would be considered a finished bourbon. So everyone knows the rules, and if you don't know the rules, a bourbon is 51% corn, has to be aged for at least 2 years, stored in a new oak barrel. So what this has done is they actually take I believe their small batch, and actually put it in a finish of a toasted whiskey barrel. A toasted whiskey barrel, which we're going to talk about in next week's episode more, gives you a much lighter, friendlier, sweeter notes, some more oaky notes. So actually being aged in a second toasted barrel will change the flavor of the small batch into what this is. So we'll dive in here today and explore. We'll go through kind of all of our tasting notes, do the visual, look at it, smell it, taste it, finish it, rank it. But as we do that, again, we will go through and answer our questions. So I just made the pour. Let's create some legs here, and we'll answer our first section we'll answer our first few questions from the newbies. So newbies are new to the game. Question number 1 from the whiskey side of the newbies. How do I store my whiskey? I'm starting to collect a few bottles at the house. What do I need to do to store them? The best thing you can do to store your whiskey: dark, cool place, no direct sunlight. Those are kind of the main ones. The beauty of grain and the alcohol proof is it is actually pretty durable. It will, unlike wine that goes bad quickly, a spirit can sit on the wall as long as it's not in direct sunlight, as long as you have, by cool I mean not big temperature changes. So, an air-conditioned room, basement, things like that, where the temperature is relatively stable, your whiskey can sit on the shelves for a very long time. Some of the tricks I know is when your whiskey bottle gets below 50%, such as my Redbreast here, or my Redbreast is right at about 50%. Once there is more oxygen in the bottle than actual whiskey, your whiskey can start to oxidize and the flavors can start to change. So if you do get into a bottle where it's getting down below 50%, I usually change that down to a 375. So if I have a 750 milliliter bottle, I'll move it into a 350 milliliter bottle. And again, just by reducing the amount of oxygen, the actual whiskey will keep on the shelf longer. And the other big piece too is if you're not drinking your whiskey bottles often, or again, if you have a bunch on the wall and you get to them here or there, about once a month, once every few months, I like to come and just rotate my bottle if I haven't been drinking from it, because what that will do will actually dampen the cork inside, because most whiskey bottles have corks. Now, if it's a synthetic cork or a screw top, you don't need to do it. But if you have a true cork, you want to make sure that the cork stays nice and moist and wet. That way the seal is good and your whiskey will not evaporate as well as allow more oxygen in the system. So those would be some of the tricks and trades. I really encourage you, not to let your bottle sit forever. But again, they are very capable of sitting on the shelf inside of your bar for a very long time. And if they are sealed, where they have not been opened yet, as long as you maintain the good temperature out of direct sunlight, your whiskey bottle should be able to sit on the shelf or on the wall for years. So again, the beauty of the system is the whiskey bottles can hang around a very, very long time. Another question I got on the newbie side of golf, and I think the newbie side of golf is going to challenge me more than anything. I'm not very far removed from the newbie side inside of whiskey, but I'm pretty far removed from the newbie side of golf. So when I first started playing golf I would call it maybe high school. Needless to say, I've been out of high school for a while. So for me to go back and think about a lot of the new pieces that people are asking me about the newbie side of golf is really fun. I am a golf instructor. I do a lot of golf instruction, but I do mainly high-end players, tour players, high-end amateurs, junior players, collegiate golfers. So I get a lot of players that already have a very big skill set coming in, so I don't deal with the new golfer very often. So this category is going to be fun because it's going to make me go back and really think about when I first began and some of the challenges out there for you that are just starting your golf journey. Maybe you're big into whiskey, maybe golf is new to you. So basic rules of golf, what are they? Simple. Play the ball as it lies. No matter where you hit the ball, as long as you're on the golf course, you have to play it as it lies. Play the course as you find it. Doesn't mean you're allowed to break tree branches, tee things up, roll the ball, do things like that. So we got to play the ball where it lies, play the golf course as you found it, and then the final one is count every stroke. Every swing of the club that you intentionally try to hit the ball. That doesn't mean that you have to hit the ball. If I intentionally try to hit the ball and I miss the ball, that actually counts as a stroke. So anytime that I'm trying to swing the golf club with intention of moving the ball forward, that's a stroke, and you're just going to count them up. And in the beginning, you're going to count a lot. And as you get better and as we progress inside the system, you will get better and better, and you will swing less and less. But again, those are really, really the key pieces to the rules of golf. Play it as it lies, play the golf courses as it found, count every shot. Now, some other cool kind of quick things to think about, like if you're just starting, on the tee box, you have to hit between the tee markers no more than 2 clubs back, but make sure you hit from the tee box area. That's huge. When you are in a hazard, make sure your club is not grounded or touching the ground, sand, water hazard, things like that. The club is not allowed to touch the hazard until you actually try to contact the golf ball. And I think the most important piece is what we call pace of play. Play ready golf if you're in a group of newer people. Technically you should wait for the furthest person from the hole should go, but if we were, depending on the caliber of player, ready golf, if you can get to the ball quickly and safely and start to hit it without injuring yourself or others, try to speed up play that way. And pace of play, again, is just make sure that you're keeping up with the group in front of you. If you're starting to fall behind the group in front of you, you need to pick up the pace. And if you haven't picked up the pace, if there's other groups that are stacking up behind you, you need to let them play through. And if you let them play through, that means that they can go catch the group in front of you and you're not really slowing the golf course down. So pace of play is huge. You can be a bad golfer, but just be fast. It's okay. All right, so let's go in here and let's nose our Elijah Craig. What I know, anytime, if you've had any Elijah Craig products, you know you're going to get caramel, sweet, vanilla, and a lot of oak. I'm getting a lot of oak off of this one. That is an Elijah Craig special. Once again, we're going to look at the legs, what kind of legs we have here. Legs are fairly slow, fairly wide. What's this, about 90 proof, 94 proof? So again, you can see the legs are trickling down the side, kind of slow, kind of wide. Color-wise, we're looking at kind of a 4 to 6 year, and I believe this is 4 years in the barrel, 4 to 6 years in the barrel, plus some amount of time in the toasted barrel. I don't think he gives me the exact time in the toasted barrel. But again, this is what we would expect from an Elijah Craig. So on the nose, it's definitely bourbon. A little more oaky than I normally expect. But can't wait to taste it. But we got to talk about casual golfers and whiskey makers before we get into the taste. So how can you distinguish the difference between the different types of whiskey? That's probably my number one question is how do I start to notice the differences? Well, Once you start to understand that Scotches and Irishes are made with predominantly malt, bourbons are predominantly corn, there are rye whiskeys, there are wheat whiskeys, and there's other brands, and there's conversions of. Once you start to understand the main grain and what region it comes from, you can really start to anticipate what each one is going to taste like. So to give you an idea, well, number one, you got to practice. Practice. Try different whiskeys. Go to your local ABC liquor store, package store, whatever you call it, and buy sample bottles and try sample bottles because they're relatively cheap. Cheaper than going to a bar. A whiskey bar is great, but if you go and get some sampler bottles, you can try a bunch of different whiskeys that way. Also, there's a group called Blind Barrels. If you really get into it, they send you quarterly 4 sample packs of whiskeys that you can blind taste test and really do. I get no money from them, but they're a spectacular group. I would really encourage you to go find the Blind Barrels guys if this is as we're starting to progress through. But to really start to understand, if you get a malted whiskeys tend to be very floral, very fruity. I would even say kind of like think of oats and think of grain, like bakery kind of tones to it, right? But again, you get a lot of floral, you get a lot of fruit. That's kind of what a malt does. So malts to me, by nose, by taste, you can usually pull out a malt pretty quickly. Not always, but pretty quickly. Bourbons, right? American's warhorse for the whiskey side is 51% corn plus. That you're going to get a lot of sweet, you're going to get a lot of vanilla, you're going to get some oak, but the corn process is sweet. I mean, again, you're going to get the vanilla from the oak barrel, you're going to get lots of vanilla. I really like my bourbons. We have scotches, right? So scotch is a meat, but a lot is a malt, but they have something called peat. So malted barley is a grain. Well, barley is a grain, right? When they malt it, they actually tease it to sprout. They wet it. And once it sprouts, they hit it with heat to kill it off, and that's why it becomes malted. That releases enzymes, makes the distilling process easier. When they do it in Scotland, and even in Ireland has some of these as well, they burn peat to stop the malting process, so you get this smoky flavor. So kind of a campfire-y flavor inside the whiskey. So there is peated scotches, but when you think of scotch, a lot of times you're thinking fruity, you're thinking citrus, you're thinking floral, and also a lot of times they're going to have this peat tone. A rye whiskey, which I'm a huge fan of, you're going to get really sweet up in the front. Different than a bourbon sweet. It's more of a sugary honey sweet, and then it got this spice note behind it, like this peppery baking spice tone to it. Again, I'm a huge fan of ryes. And then the final one I would say, kind of thinking wise, is Irish whiskeys. What Irish whiskeys do differently than scotches is they triple distill. So typically when you run it through the still, most distilleries run it through twice to ramp up the ABV, alcohol by volume. When it comes out the still the first time, it's going to be pretty low in alcohol count, but when they run it through the second time, they can get that number up around 160, 180 proof. So get it really, 90%, 85, 90% alcohol. So that's really cool, but what the Irish do is they run it through 3 times. Not so much to ramp up the amount of alcohol in the distillant, more so that the more times you run it through the still, the smoother the grain becomes. So you take away possibly some complexities, but you get a smoothness. That's why when you try Irish whiskeys, they tend to be a little smoother, a little friendlier, much easier to kind of start off your journey inside of the whiskey world. So that's kind of what I would say, kind of starting to see the differences. But again, the number one way to do it is practice. Try whiskeys when you can. When you're at a friend's house, you've never had that type, hey, can I try Widow Jane? Hey, can I try Telemadur? Can I try Roe & Co? Can I try Glenfiddich? Ask friends of yours, and again, start to go in with an open mind, start to go try to find some notes, and then, like I said, just enjoy the chase of finding new flavors. Inside of the golf industry, question I get all the time, how do I read greens better? I think there's only one really, really good way to read greens, and that is using Aimpoint. Aimpoint Golf is something I've been using and teaching for almost 15 years now. Mark Sweeney is the founder of it. A spectacular system. Use your feet to be able to feel the slope of the green. Once you can designate what that slope value is, then you can basically paint a picture of what the break looks like. You see people holding up fingers on the tour, or maybe in your foursome when they're on the putting green. That is aim point, right? So that is using your feet and feels to be able to predict what break is, opposed to using your eyes. If you use your eyes, a good course architect is going to design ways for you to fail, right? They're going to set up the golf course or the visuals to make it look like the ball is going to break differently than it actually is. If you put your feet on it, just understanding by putting your feet on it and which way the ground's tilted, you'll always get the break direction right. And then you use your fingers to get the amount of break. So go find your aim point coach locally near you. I believe there's more than 300 worldwide. Go get your lesson, learn how to read greens better, because if you read greens better, putting becomes disproportionately better. I promise. All right, so let's go in here and actually taste this puppy one more. So. Remember, first sip is always a primer sip. I'm not looking for a lot of flavors, but I'm trying to pipe up the system, get it ready. Introducing a high proof alcohol, just want to make sure everything's awake. That's really good on the first sip. That means the second sip is going to be spectacular. Second sip's always better. We're just going to talk the initial taste. We'll do finish last. It's nice. Out the gate, I get sugar, I get caramel, I get sweet, even pushing brown sugar flavor. Really, really sweet. Elijah Craig, if you've had Elijah Craig in the past, really likes that sweetness forward. Definitely get vanilla notes. Very, very nice. Getting a lot more oak than I normally do with a lot of the Elijah Craig, so it's kind of good. I'm getting a little more, because it was aged again in its second barrel, it actually pulls out a little bit more white oak notes, which I don't mind, to be honest. Very good whiskey. So right out the gate, I'm getting a lot of floral. Yeah, it's good. Second back end, I'm actually getting some spice. Must have a fairly high rye content. I did not look up the mash bill on this. I probably should have, but that's okay. You can look it up. But I'm getting some spice, kind of that next level. But again, it's not over the powering spice, but there is definitely a spice component. And again, I'm just getting different levels of sweetness throughout. One more sip. To me, this is a good American bourbon. Now, it is finished. So it's technically not a bourbon. It's a finished bourbon, but it's good. Like I said, I'm a high rye bourbon. It's probably my favorite. I do like a good bourbon. I like a good rye, but you put a high rye together, which is a mash bill of at least 51% corn, probably somewhere in the 20s to 30s with rye, and then a little bit of malt on the back end. Really, really good whiskey here. I really enjoy it. I'm glad I purchased this on our family vacation that we had a couple weeks ago. All right, so now let's jump into Dangerous before we get into the actual finish. Dangerous, compare cask strength to normal whiskey. So cask strengths, like this Booker's here, anytime you see cask strength, that means it is whatever it comes out of the barrel, and we can even look here, it's silky. This is actually a cask strength Irish whiskey. And this is coming out at 63.67% alcohol. So that's what, 127 proof, right? So the beauty is cask strength means whatever the alcohol they push it into the barrel, you're gonna get back out. So basically it goes barrel to bottle straight to you. Now granted, they'll filter it a little bit, but they're not gonna add water, coloring, or anything to it. So cask strength means that you're getting the alcohol content that was put into the barrel. A lot of normal whiskeys, when you're seeing at 80 proof, such as like I don't know, no, that's 100 proof. So like Travelers is pretty low. Redbreast, Green Spot. What they do a lot of times with those is they'll actually cut it with water. So they'll run it in the barrel, they'll filter it out, and they'll actually add water to the bottle as they're putting the whiskey in. And what that does is it cuts the amount of alcohol volume, and it also One, it allows the alcohol company to make more money because they're watering down their alcohol product. But again, when you add water, it can bring out different flavors, but more so, it just brings the alcohol level down. And a lot of people like to drink at 80, 90 proof because it is a much smoother, friendlier area to hang out with. When you drink in the 120s, 130s, that area can be a little bit painful for you. But again, so anytime you see cask strength on the bottle, that just tells you that it's gone from whatever they put the alcohol in the barrel, whatever comes out of the barrel is the same. They haven't cut it or changed the proofing at all. So that is, also, I think this was a good question on the golf side for Dangerous, before I get to finish here. What are some strategies for different courses? That's a good question. When we train for golf, we have to train for what we're getting ready to go compete in. If I play the same golf course every weekend, then I'm going to set up my training and my regimen of how to prepare for the golf course the same. If I'm playing varied courses, I need to change my attitude in training and thinking as we're going forward to what the course is going to play. Give a great example. My son played in a junior tournament yesterday. I was out there watching him. It was a really tight course, not very long, but it was tight. By tight, I mean the fairways were really tight, the greens were small. But the overall distance wasn't very long. So a lot of the shots coming in, you're using smaller clubs. So you're using wedges, 9 irons, 8 irons, things along that line. So what the sole purpose of that golf course, preparing for that, all we worked on were iron play off the tee, keep it in the fairway because we don't have to be long, and then really trying to be precise as we can with our ability to hit our 8 iron and below. We did a lot of finger dispersion work. Again, trying to control left to right laterals. If you don't understand finger dispersions and you are a golfer, go into Golf Cask, go under the finger dispersion category and go watch those videos. There's 6 videos I did with Rob Fales. They're spectacular. I guarantee you, if you apply finger dispersions, you'll pick up 10% of shots immediately. Well, I can't guarantee it, but you should. But it's a really good system for you to be able to start to control the golf ball better and understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. So again, to strategize for courses, you got to think of what the course is, prepare for it, and also understand your strengths and weaknesses. If my driver is still my strength and I can manage this golf course and keep my tolerances very tight and hit a bunch of fairways, then it's still good to hit drivers. But again, we can't go to golf courses and have big glaring holes and then set up where those glaring holes are going to be a disproportionate amount of our shots. If for some reason I can't hit an iron off the tee box, then I can't go into a golf course and start to think I'm going to hit long irons off the tee box and that's going to be the way to play the golf course. If I'm incapable of doing that, I've got to figure out a different route. Maybe it's playing even more of a mid iron, or maybe it is playing a wood or a 5 wood or a 7 wood or something off the tee. But again, so strategy, you got to understand what the golf course wants to do to you, what you're capable of doing, and then the other piece would be, when do I have to override the system? So to me, strategy-wise, is if I'm coming down the stretch and I'm trying to win a tournament, I might need to override the system. So maybe I have to hit a driver because I need the extra distance on a par 5 so I can get there in 2 because I'm down 2. So again, being flexible in your strategy is really important. You have to understand the moment, where you are, and what is needed, and what are my goals, and then conform as well. But I would say most people going to golf courses as a dangerous golfer mess up because they don't strategize and think about training leading into the event. They're more at the event reacting to the golf course. I don't ever want to react to the golf course. I want to go in and have a true plan, and I'm going to have a couple A plan, B plan, C plan. That way I'm kind of, no matter what condition changes or what happens, I have a plan ready to go in case these conditions change. I don't want to react on every shot because golf is really, really difficult if we're reacting on every single shot. Understanding my strengths and weaknesses, so I need to strategize my training and my abilities and put myself in positions as much as I can where I can perform. And then, of course, understanding where we are in time. It's really, really important. If my goal is not to win, it is to make a cut, or it's to make, not to be last, I can play the golf course differently than trying to win. So again, you got to understand where you are and what your actual expectations and goals are. So those would be your dangerous questions. So let's go in here to finish. After the little alcohol hug, I still get a little bit of lingering spice. Then I get this next level of sweet, a little dry mouth, but I get a level of sweet and oak on the back end. So the front end and the back end are very, very similar. Middle is spicy. So to me, again, really, really, really good high rye bourbon. I would almost say you kind of get a marshmallowy sweet. So I think the sweetness changed a little bit on the back end. I think it's from the toasting. I think I've had enough toasted malts. You get this kind of like a different kind of sweet. It's still sweet, but again, to me, it's more of a sugary, marshmallowy sweet, which is kind of quirky, I know. But that's what I get. You get what you get. So again, to me, very, very good finished bourbon. I know some of you hate finished bourbons and will probably yell at me, laugh at me, and send me mean emails. That's okay, man. I'm all for it. Send me mean emails. But I really enjoy a good whiskey, even if it's finished in a different type of whiskey barrel, ports, sherry, whatever that might be. But again, I really enjoy toasted barrels. Mitcher's Toasted is one of my favorite. This one's pretty good. It's not as good as Mitcher's, but it's good. All right, so let's talk about enthusiasts, right? Our last section here. Most influential. Who are some of the biggest and most influential distilleries currently? Well, we have the conglomerates. We have Diageo. We have all these big conglomerates that own a lot of stuff. But if you were just looking at the whiskey world, not thinking of the conglomerates that own them, but just kind of who's got the most influence. So inside of this, we're going to talk the big three: America, Scotch, Scotland, and Irish, Ireland. There's Canadians are a legacy brand, and so is Japanese, but we're going to really look at the three because these are the three that you see the most and the majority of people in the system enjoy the most. So Scotch, you have Macallan, you have Glenfiddich, you have Glenlivet's. There's tons. There's a lot of Scotches out there. But those are some of your bigger brands. And again, Scotch is the daddy of all whiskeys. It is the most drank spirit in the world. Scotch. When the English took over the world, which they did a really good job, Scotch freighters went with them. So Scotch has been delivered all around the world for a lot of years. And it's good whiskey. If you like a good malt, Scotch whiskey is your way to go. Irish whiskeys, again, we're going to look at Jameson's, we're going to look at Bushmills, Middleton. Middleton does Redbreast, the Spots. Bushmills, I think, is the oldest active distillery in the world. And Jameson is quintessential Irish whiskey, right? So all of those would be kind of your big distilleries that I would say in Ireland. And then inside of the U.S., we're going to look at it. We'll do more than bourbon. We'll call it American whiskeys. So Jack Daniel's, not a bourbon. They do make bourbons, but when you think of Jack Daniel's number 7, they have a special process, the Lincoln Counting process. We'll talk about that in the future, but you have Jack Daniel's, you have Jim Beam, you have Wild Turkey, Buffalo Trace, Maker's Mark. There's countless big distilleries. But again, these are kind of the biggest, most influential distilleries inside the system. I think the really interesting part right now inside the U.S., there's about 3,000 distilleries. In the late 70s and 80s, there was about 70 distilleries. So there is a rebirth. But the ones that were able to survive Prohibition, survive kind of the whiskey collapse in the 70s and 80s, the ones that are still around are producing quality whiskeys and really, really have refined their process so good that anytime you go grab a Wild Turkey 101, it tastes like or an Elijah Craig, it tastes like an Elijah Craig. They're spectacular at what they do. I think the interesting piece about the Irish whiskeys, again, they collapsed as well, and I think they were down to about 5 or 6 distilleries. And now I believe, they're growing quickly. And I read an article just the other day that 800,000 tourists, have visited Irish distilleries in the past year. So again, there's a lot of distilleries, there's a lot of people interested in Irish spirits, and inside the U.S., Irish spirits is a huge growing market. So if you've never had an Irish, I encourage you to go out and try one. The enthusiast question I got is, how do I become a better course manager? How do I make better decisions on the course? Number one is you have to play. I can tell you what to do, a coach can tell you what to do, a caddy can tell you what to do, but you're the player. You've got to be able to go out and play and experience it. So the number one best way of becoming a course manager is playing lots of golf and learn from that. The other component would be to train your dispersions. What do I mean by dispersions? So if I hit 10 shots, what is the average dispersion? So if here's my flag stick, left or right of that, what is my average dispersion for my different clubs? And once I understand what my dispersions are, now I can make better targeting ideas to give myself a better chance to play. So controlling the golf ball and understanding your dispersion rates, long, short, and lateral, left, right, long, short, is really, really key to becoming a better course manager. Also goes back into knowing thyself, right? What are my abilities? What can I do? What can I pull off? I'm a 50% or better guy, right? Like Bourbon, right? 51% corner better. If I think I can pull this shot off 50% of the time or more, I'm more than likely going to hit the shot. If I'm under 50%, I'm not going to hit that shot. I'm going to hit another shot that might be less optimal, might put me further from the hole, but it's something I know I can do more than 50% of the time. So to me, that is a kind of a risk-reward number that I have in my head. I know some coaches teach 70-30, risk, reward to risk. Again, for you, the player, the coach, that's really kind of what you want, kind of your bravado as you go on the golf course. Also with course management, again, it's understanding the course wants to do something to you, and you've got to be able to play within that system, right? The course is set up a par 4 because it should take you 4 holes from tee box to get it into the hole. Doesn't mean this hole's a birdie hole. It means it's a par 4, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to make a 3. I can set up a game plan to make a 3. It doesn't mean I'm going to make a 3. So again, understanding what the golf course is and reacting to the golf course is really big. But more than anything, it's just understanding risk and reward and my abilities and what the golf course wants to do to me. If you kind of go into every shot with that understanding, you can make really, really good, effective decisions and really hit good golf shots. So to me, course management for the enthusiast, so now you're really in love with the game. Now we're trying to pull back some areas to get better and better in the game. Course management would be a big, big factor. So ranking for my Elijah Craig. On the nose, I'm going to give it a 3. Taste, I'm going to give it a 3.5. Finish, I'm going to give it a 3. So overall, it's a good par, man. It's a good par whiskey. On occasions, I'm going to drain the birdie putt. But again, Elijah Craig, toasted barrel, great nose. Maybe 3.5 on the nose. Really sweet, really vanilla, really oaky. I kind of like it. But a really, really good solid whiskey. Can't go wrong with this one. So let's go in here and let's do some kind of a rapid fire. We'll quick nips. I guess we can call it quick nips. Why not? Quick nip. What is my number one go-to pour right now? My number one pour in the summer, I actually, good question. I've actually been drinking a lot of Lost Whiskey. Lost Whiskey is one of my favorite, but I've been drinking their non-cask strength. So definitely something in the 90s. A really good high rye Virginia bourbon. If you get a chance to find a bottle of Lost, I really, really encourage you to try it. I would say that's probably my number one pour right now. Kind of legacy, big brands. I would say I've really been drinking the Redwood Pipe Dream a bunch. I really enjoy their bourbon. It's got a different flavor profiles than a lot of bourbons I like. Again, I really enjoy that one. So those would be probably the 2 I've been drinking the most. What is my favorite golf ball? White. Harder balls than less spinny balls for me. I'm getting older, I don't hit it as far, so I want a golf ball that spins less so I can try to maximize distance off the tee. I can adjust for less spin around the green by adjusting height of my chip shots. I've been playing golf a long time, teaching short game, so I can control trajectories. So to me, I would say a white golf ball, ideally less spinny for maximum distance off the tee. And I don't go spending a lot of money on golf balls. Those days are gone. So right now I've really been impressed with the Vice golf balls. So the Vices I think are pretty decent for the price. I would check those out. When I play a tournament, it's usually Vice Tour. It's like $35-40 a dozen. Non-tour, like non-competition, pretty much any golf ball I find on the golf course. Or I can now start stealing from my son's bag now that he has a lot of really good golf balls in his bag. But again, to me, don't overdo the golf ball unless you're really a high-end player and want something consistent. Then golf ball matters much more. Keep it cheap. keep it white, but more so, keep it in play. That way you don't have to buy more. What is my favorite entry into the Irish whiskeys? Ooh, that's a good question. I would say I'm a big fan of Tullamore Dew. Really, really good entry. Powers is one of my favorite when I'm in Ireland and we're bellied up to a bar. They don't do cocktails very much in Ireland. They don't have maybe a huge selection of different Irishes. But to me, the baseline Powers is really good. I get coconut from it, which I find exciting and really cool. Powers is really good. Paddy's is cheap and good. Jameson's, you can never go wrong with Jameson's. You know, we talked about the big distilleries. All really, really good. But I would say Tullamore Dew is probably one of my favorite entry levels. It's got some complexity. You could drink it neat, but it's better in a cocktail or something along that lines. But to me, really good entry. What kind of golf clubs would I recommend for a newbie? Secondhand. Go to a Play It Again Sports, go to garage sales. When you're learning the game, the equipment matters, but the equipment really matters when you get really, really good. So once you got a swing and everything kind of sets up the same, we want to make sure that the equipment fits you perfectly. But as we're kind of learning, our swings and our systems are always going to be changing. So it's okay to go buy secondhand. You do not need to have the nicest set of golf clubs on earth because, again, you just don't know how to use the tools yet. So secondhand, aftermarket, best by far. If you are going to play tournament golf, just make sure that the grooves are compliant, that they're not so old of a set that you're not technically allowed to play them in a tournament. But more so than not, just go try find some good secondhand, a few years old, 3, 4, 5 years old at a secondhand store, and just start playing that way. And again, as you start getting better, then we're going to start changing out wedges, and then we'll start changing out irons. We'll change out your woods, your shafts, get everything to match you. But out the gate, secondhand is the best way to go. Went with a friend not too long ago. He got a good set of pings, golf bag, driver, 3-wood, putter for like $300. I mean, a good set of clubs to go start his journey inside of the golf world. You don't have to spend $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 or $7,000. Again, you can get rolling for a couple $100, and trust me, it's a good way to start. Golf is not cheap. No reason to spend a lot of money up front in areas that don't really matter much to changing your game. And on top of clubs, I would say start with lessons. Even more so, once you kind of get a good cheap set of clubs, start with lessons. Start to understand how to move the club, move your body in space, and start to control the golf ball. That'll make golf much more fun. You'll get better faster. And if you need help in finding a good golf coach, I've been in the business for a long time, shoot me an email, tell me where you live, and I will do some research and kind of give you some good ideas. All right, last 2 questions here. You talk about the love of the chase, cracking new bottles. What new bottles have you cracked in the last few weeks that were 3 or better? Well, I just cracked this open about a week and a half ago. Again, 3 or better, check. I did the blind tasting with Jimmy Red, which was really, really cool. A young bourbon, but really sweet, really fun. That was better than a 3. What else did I crack? I cracked Bushmills 14 not too long ago. Good, solid malt. I enjoyed that one. That was well over a 3. So those are the ones that have popped to my head the most recent. Actually, we were at Blacksburg, the J.H. Bard single malt. Haven't had in a while. That's a really kind of cool toasted barrel finish. So that was a 3 or better. So those would be the cracks that I've had probably in the last month. But again, I love to go try new stuff. I've actually done 2 blind tasting via blind barrels, and there's 2 or 3 in there that were spectacular. I can't remember the names offhand. Maybe I can add them to an email, but really, really good stuff. So those would be some of the cracks and some of the newer ones I've tried. And then the final question I got was, what golf course do you really want to go play, and who do you want to play with? Right? That's a pretty normal golf question. Any golf course, my son will play golf with me. He's at that age, he's starting to play good golf. We can go anywhere in the world now, and both of us can play any golf course in the world, play it decently, and not embarrass ourselves. So to me, it would be any golf course in the world. I'm going to try to get him to Ireland in 2025, see if we can play some rounds over there. And then we set a goal to play all 50 states before my passing, whenever that might be. So we're trying to come up with play golf together in the 50 states here over the next maybe 10 years. Hopefully I last that long and be able to play some golf and enjoy times with him traveling and playing golf courses around the world. And of course, as he gets older and I can get him to drink whiskey with me, but we got 5 more years, so he's got some time before that. But again, we're going to do a lot of stuff like that in the coming years. So to me, it's just being able to play with my son and then again travel and enjoy that part with him. Like I said, inside the states, man, there's so many great golf courses, so many great states. Again, I don't know, but I'll keep you posted as we're going through it. I think right now we've done 5 or 6 states. So we've done Texas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, one other one. Delaware, I think. Those come to mind. So again, there's some opportunities, and we're going to try to peel that back bigger and bigger and create more and more opportunities. Hey, if you live in a state with a great golf course and you want my son and I to come out and drink some whiskey and play golf with you, let me know. Maybe we can make that happen. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this question and answer podcast. Once again, just defining kind of the different roles, taking questions from each. We did a great tasting here with Elijah Craig Bourbon Toasted Finish, a really, really good whiskey. Thank you again. Like I said, next week, tempo and timing, controlling the putt and controlling the burn of the barrel, how these affect the outcome, right? So as we learn distance control, and then we also learn the char of the barrel, how we can change the flavor and make more putts. So that'll be next week. And again, we want to thank everybody. Make sure that if you're not a member, go join golfcast.com. It's free right now and you get full access to the website. This offer is going to end soon because our numbers are growing, which I like. But again, if you want to jump in now and get free access to everything, get in there now. Find our socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X are the main areas that I'm posting right now. Get in there, create conversations, and then our final push is, hey, complete your foursome, right? If you're in the system, invite 3 friends in the system for free, get them in the system engaged and talking, and let's grow this society because, again, we have really, really cool stuff coming that is being built. I was on 3 phone calls this morning with different groups as we're building these pieces out, so make sure that you get in the system, get your name in there, and let's get this baby rolling. So thank you again. Cheers. Salancha. And until next time.